Okay, we are live. A couple of things been on my mind. I've done a couple of videos where I have publicly stated that essentially, you know, I'm really upset. So, why am I upset? I'm upset uh, because we've been basically lying to ourselves, and we've had some help from scientists to help us lie to ourselves. I know I know why we've been telling ourselves these fairy tales about climate change. Actually, it's global heating, but you know what I mean. We don't want to frighten ourselves. We don't want to frighten the children. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to, uh, you know, take drastic measures that maybe aren't even necessary, and all this kind of stuff. The other thing I get upset about, in particular from scientists, because they're the only ones who self-qualify as being able to make these statements, are statements about when all this will happen. It's way off. Typically, they use broad brushstrokes like, "Well, we don't really see this happening until the year 2100. Well, we don't really see this happening until the year 2050." If you're kind of paying attention, and if you've been, listening to any of this for a while, as I have, and probably, most people are not, you'll notice a couple of things. One, the dates they just choose, which they really just pull out of the air because we have no experience with any of this, right? They just kind of pull these things out of the air. The dates they're picking are always kind of suspiciously out there. You'll notice anybody, anything that's going to happen in the year 2100, exactly. Even the second coming of Christ. Okay, Jesus Christ will come. I have a memo. Here's the printout right here. The memo's right here. It says here, I am Christ Jesus. I will return to the earth in the year 2100. That's so far out that no one would even care. I mean, a lot of people would pray and praise God and thank you, Jesus, but they wouldn't change anything. Even with the second coming of Christ, chariots of fire, the whole thing, nobody would change a thing until the year 2100. Even the year 2050 is, even though that, see, we're now, let's say we're 2025, we're not, but around figures, that's 25 years from now. That's dipping into the adult life of children born today. So 2050 is not that far out, but it has the advantage of being pretty far out for people my age, which is most of your upper middle class white people, most of your leadership in any democracy at all. They're 55, 60, 65. 2050 is way beyond the horizon of their political life, probably. And there may be even their physical life. 2050, will I still be alive? Well, I don't know. So something's going to happen in the year 2050. Fine, go ahead, bring it. I don't really care, as long as it doesn't interfere with my social security, disbursements every month right now, or my access to healthcare today. Well, then I'm okay with it. So these numbers are always very suspicious, and they always make me mad. They always make me mad because I'm enough of a climate scientist, a scientist in general, that there's no basis for these selections of choosing these numbers. And now you could say, if there's no basis for choosing any date, then you may as well choose one that's way down the road because it means we don't have to worry about it right now, and that means that we won't be in a panic or take any unnecessary measures or interfere with our sacred way of life until it actually happens. So we'll just pick a date that's way out. No one will be worried about it. And then when the day comes and it actually happens, well, then we'll have to deal with it and we'll deal with it then. That's kind of the attitude. Now, I have seen in my own life, uh, for the time I've been dealing with this topic, that uh, the situation with regards to picking dates we are ill served by this. It's not good the way we're doing this. We should either not pick a date and simply say we just don't know when. We don't know when. And that would cause some alarm. What do you mean you don't know when? It could be tomorrow. Yeah, it could be tomorrow. not likely to be tomorrow, more likely to be somewhere down the road, but we just don't know when. So I'm not going to pick a date. I'm not going to pick 2050, a nice round figure. So you can all go to your calendar and put an X on January 1, 2050. And that's the day when we have to do something. Oh, wow. Maybe I'll be dead. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, scientists could say, I just don't know when. Could be any time. We don't really understand the system well enough, but they won't do that. They won't do that. For one thing, the politicians will push them, just pick a date. And they're going to say, well, I can't pick a date. Well, then guess a date. And if they're going to guess a date, the best one to guess is something that's way out when their career is over and no one can hold them accountable. Now, I have seen this work, and it works poorly. When I was still in college, and my professor, the students were assembled, and my professor brought out a chart of the Keeling curve when we were looking at the Keeling curve. At the same time that global heating was becoming common knowledge among scientists, meaning people outside of actual climate science, right? So it started to bleed out into other fields. So about the time that happened, people were thinking that massive changes in the cryosphere, which is the ice, okay, were thousands of years out, thousands. Honestly, if you knew that something was 1,000 years out, then worrying about it today really doesn't make much sense. Now, I can make guesses as to why they thought it was thousands of years out. I guess I don't really want to waste time on that. It's part of it is normalcy bias. We know that ice ages come and go. Again, if you don't know that, well, welcome to the majority, okay? But ice ages come and go. Interglacials come and go. And this process of coming and going is well understood. It can be predicted. And it takes thousands of years, tens of thousands of years for these kinds of shifts in the Earth system. So to say that, well, global heating, we wouldn't expect it to make changes for thousands of years, that's kind of in alignment with the science, the understood science of how ice ages, which are geologically huge and over time are massive events that can take thousands of years to make any real visible changes. So we were talking about that, and we were saying, yeah, this is way down the road, it's hundreds of years, if not thousands. More of a curiosity right now. What is this? Is this important? Is this going to be a thing? The ice shelves that were associated with the West Antarctic Peninsula, which is a tongue of mountain ranges that extends from the Antarctic continent to close to South America. And you can even kind of imagine in your head that maybe the Antarctica used to be connected to South America because of this ridge of mountains. It's sort of like a continuous thing. Well, there are ice shelves, floating ice formations on that peninsula. And people were thinking, yeah, those are probably going to melt because, they're kind of out there, they're exposed to the water. And when we get global heating, those are going to melt. And, it's water-based ice, so it's not even going to raise sea level, but it'll be like what they call a canary in the coal mine. It'll be an indicator that something changes are coming, okay? But again, Larsen A, Larsen B, Larsen C, these ice shelves that are on the water, we'll have hundreds of years of warning from those before we have to worry about massive changes in the Earth system climate. Well, I remember when Larsen A vanished. I remember that. I wasn't down there, but I was paying attention to the news, science news, and I remember when that happened. And I think, as I'm trying to recall, it's almost like literally a month before, someone had written a paper saying, oh yeah, Larsen A, that's the one to watch because it's closest to South America, but it'll be 300 years before that melts. Like the next month, it vanished. I mean, it got smaller, like an ice cube, and putting your soda in, the ice cube gets a little smaller, and then it gets smaller because it's melting, right? It gets smaller, and pretty soon it's gone. Larsen A vanished. Gone. They got satellites. They're watching all this ice and they're studying all this ice. And someone got up one day and looked at the printout from the satellite image. Something's different about this. Let me see if I can't quite put a finger on it. Oh wait, where's Larson A? I mean, that's what happened. Okay, so Larson A didn't melt. Larson A broke apart. Now that's different, right? That's different. You have an ice cube and it's sitting on the table and it's melting. It's going to take a while. Okay. And you could even even if you knew anything about melt dynamics, you could probably predict how long is it going to take for that piece of ice sitting on the table to melt. And then someone comes along with a big hammer and they hit the ice and it's gone, shattered, scattered all over the room. Well, that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be allowed to melt. Nature doesn't care. Physics doesn't care what you think is going to happen. Larson A broke apart. Scientists losing their minds. Okay. It didn't take 300 years. It took 3 days. It took 3 days and it was gone. And then they were like, what about Larson B? Geez, I don't know. Do we even want to make a prediction? Okay. 3 years later, it was gone. It's gone. Where's Larson B? I don't know. I thought you had it. It's gone. And then some 5-10 years later, Larson C broke apart. Gone. Big part of it gone. Floats away. Who knows where it is now? It's out there in the ocean somewhere, floating away. It may still take 5, 10, 20 years for the thing to melt. But the point is, it's not where it's supposed to be. It's like taking the ice and hitting it with the hammer. Yeah, it's still ice. It's still somewhere in the room. But the point is, it's not here on the table anymore. It's gone. So we've gotten into this thing of picking dates that sound reasonable, but are very suspiciously way out in the future. I wonder how that works. How is it they always picked at these reasonable dates that are always, 5 generations away? I wonder what that's about. The correct answer is, at this point, we don't know. We just don't know. They are now predicting a catastrophic collapse of the Greenland ice sheet. I have seen use of words like irreversible, unavoidable, unstoppable. You might say, well, we could innovate. We could do something, involving, I don't know, alternative energy, maybe, No, irreversible, unavoidable. It's going to melt. Then you want to say, that sounds like a bad idea. How much sea level rise is there in a full or even significant melt of the Greenland ice sheet? Well, it's about 70 feet, 21 meters or so. Oh, that would be bad. That would be bad. 21 meters. That's a lot. What happens to New York when there's 21 meters of sea level rise, 70 feet? What happens to Florida, state of Florida, all of Florida? What happens to the Gulf states? What happens to San Francisco, the San Francisco Bay Area? 70 feet of sea level rise. Well, that sounds like a lot, right? How long will that take, though? Well, that could take thousands of years. Yeah, could. Don't know. We don't know when these things are going to happen. And if you're going to peg your planning, your land use, your building codes, your real estate transactions, your where you're going to build, which habitat, grasslands are you going to try and save, these kinds of things, on this thing happening a long time from now, you shouldn't be doing that. If you were planning on building a hotel and casino on Larson A, not that you would, but let's say you did, that would have been a bad move, right? You don't have 300 years. And if you're planning on building real estate in Southern Florida, that's also a bad idea. Yeah, that's right. Because we don't know when the West Antarctic ice shelf is going to melt. We don't know when the Thwaites Glacier cuts loose and starts dumping into the ocean. We don't know when the Greenland ice sheet is going to be in a rapid melt and decline and catastrophic failure. We don't know. And they're all going to impact how well your real estate investment does in South Florida. Yes, South Florida, like the lower third of Florida. There are some cities down there right now. There are people planning real estate sales that are going to have 30-year mortgages that people won't even pay the mortgage off before the water comes in and floods their home. Maybe even every year, and maybe even permanently at some point. That's not really the point I wanna make. It's a point that we should say we don't know. We don't know that it's gonna be in the year 2100. That's just dumb. We don't know that it's gonna be in the year 2050. We thought Larsen A would last for 300 years. It broke apart in 3 days at some point. We just don't know. We have to say we don't know. And then, of course, you have to go to the real estate brokers and the banks, the lending agencies, the mortgage companies in South Florida and say, 30-year mortgage? Really? We're still doing 30-year mortgages in the southern third of Florida? Really? Are we going to do that? 30-year mortgages? I don't know. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. You're going to be flooded at some point. I don't know when. We used to say 2100, and then we started saying 2050. It could be 2040 or even 2030. We just don't know. The real point I want to make here, while all that is true, is that it is completely, absolutely, utterly irrelevant. Everything I just said is true. Scientists should not be claiming these dates 50 years out in the future. We know we can't do that anymore. We know the system is not working with us here. We just know that. It also is irrelevant. Here's why. 70 feet of sea level rise will flood the southern half, or maybe, the southern half of Florida. Might even flood the entirety of Florida. I would want to look at a terrain map. 70. But your problems don't start when the sea level rise goes from 69 feet to 70, right? And you'll say, well, yeah, of course, by 69 feet, the change to 70 is really not much of a change. It's only 1 foot. You've already got 69 feet. What's the difference if it's a foot higher when you've got 69 feet of sea level rise on your beachfront property? Going from 69 to 70 is nothing. That's right. That's right. That is absolutely correct. And that is why saying that the Greenland ice sheet melting is going to cause 70 feet of sea level rise in Florida, and that's a problem. No, that's not your problem. That is not your problem. That is Foursquare every day, all day, not your problem. 70 feet of sea level rise is not a problem in Florida. Because by the time you get to 70 feet of sea level rise, you've also had 60 feet. And at 60 feet, there's nobody in Florida. They're gone. I don't know where they went, but by 60 feet of sea level rise, just the tops of buildings are sticking out of the water. It's now an artificial reef. And people go out there in glass bottom boats to look at Florida 60 feet down. Okay? And if I'm going to make that argument, then I can make the other argument, which is that 50 feet of sea level rise is a disaster in Florida. People will be going out in glass bottom boats to peer down at all the great sights and sounds of Florida now under 50 feet of water. And you can see where this is headed, right? People will be going out in glass bottom boats to look at Miami when there's 30 feet of water. People will be going out in glass bottom boats to see Miami when there's 20 feet of water. There won't be anybody there except fishes. Now, there's still buildings above you and all this kind of things, but 20 feet of water, that's a lot of water. Most people don't even dive that deep. So you'll be out there in a glass bottom boat because you're not a diver, and you're out there in a glass bottom boat looking at all the beautiful sights and sounds in Miami under 20 feet of water. And by the way, you'll be going out there in a boat to enjoy Miami when there's 10 feet of water. So you see what's happening here? By the time you get to 60 feet, 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet of water, it's done. Miami's done. It didn't matter if all of Greenland melted. And it didn't matter if it takes 300 years for all of Greenland to melt catastrophically. You don't have to wait for 70 feet before you're fucked, okay? You were fucked at 60 feet. Oh, well, actually, probably you were fucked at 10 feet. Actually, and this is what I want you to think about. It isn't the 70 feet or the 10 feet or even the 5 feet or even the 3 feet. It's the first foot. It's the first foot. And you can say, well, maybe Greenland melts enough for 70 feet of sea level rise 300 years from now? But what I want to know is, what is your estimation on when 1 foot of sea level rise floods downtown Miami 100 days out of the year? And 2 feet floods downtown Miami 300 days out of the year. That, my dude, is the thing we have to figure out. Now, a couple things. Number one, nobody wants to figure that out. Nobody wants to talk about that. Well, let's not talk about that. Well, let's talk about something that takes 50 years or 100 years to happen. Let's not talk about this 1 foot of sea level rise that's going to destroy downtown Miami. Let's not talk about that. I want or that submerges the Florida Keys. I don't want to deal with that. Okay. Well, yeah, that's because you're a narcissistic son of a bitch, and you want to do your real estate deal, and you want your latte at Starbucks, and you want to drive in downtown Miami and sell real estate, and you don't want to talk about 1 or 2 feet of sea level rise flooding downtown Miami 300 days a year. You just don't want to. Let's talk about something else. Okay, well, is that really an adult thing to be doing? Seriously, is that what we're going to do now as adults? We're just going to not talk about it. That's what we're doing. I guess that's what we're doing. We're just not going to talk about it. Okay, fine. You can just not talk about it then. Anybody wants to talk about that, just usher them out of the room. Anybody wants to talk about that and they won't shut up, just don't invite them next time. Don't invite them to the Chamber of Commerce. Don't invite them to the mayor's luncheon buffet. Don't invite them. Don't let them run for government. Don't fund them when they try to become political leaders. Just no, go away. Go away. Take your whatever, your alarmism, your chicken little sky is falling. Just run along. Run along. Yeah, that's right. Keep going. Out the door. Close the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass. You could do that. That's what we're doing now. That's actually the default. 70 feet of sea level rise from the Greenland ice sheet. Man, that's going to be hard on beachfront real estate. So when's that going to happen? 300 years? Okay, wow. That's the best news. That's the best thing I've heard all day. Thank you very much for clearing that up for us. I feel a lot better about that projection of 70 feet of sea level rise from a catastrophic collapse of the Greenland ice sheet. 300 years? Maybe it's even 1,000, right? Okay, that's even better. That's even better. That's great. Problem solved, right? Problem solved. Yeah, this is easy. Solving these kind of problems is easy, man. It's just narrative warfare. It's not the 70 feet, and you don't have 300 years to figure out where the problems are going to come in. It's the first foot. Now, you go to the South Pacific Islands, and they're all 3 feet above sea level completely. I mean, the highest point on the island, apart from the tops of the houses, the highest point on the island is 3 feet above sea level. You can go to Bangladesh. The whole country practically is like 3 feet above sea level. The highest point is 3 feet above sea level. It's like, what, 200 million people live there or something? Go to South Florida. You'd have to go 150 miles to find any place that's more than 3 feet above sea level. And just let me point out, although I would never buy real estate, beachfront property in Bangladesh for my casino and my whatever, the people that live there, when they are up to their chests in seawater 100 days out of the year, they're going to leave. They're going to leave. They're going to leave that place. And they're going to go east, and they're going to go west, and they're going to go north, and they're going to get on boats, and they're just going to leave. And given how these things happen, meaning that everyone tends to make the same decision at the same time for the same reasons. Okay, families all make the same decision to leave at the same time because they're trying to all save their children for the same reason. Okay, they don't have enough food, and they all ran out of food at the same time. They don't have any water to drink because all the infrastructure has been destroyed and it's all got salt water in it. So they all get thirsty at the same time, and they all leave at the same time. Okay, that's how this works. So it's not like there's a few people that just give up and sell their house to some greater fool and then they leave. No. Everybody leaves all at once for the same reason, and they're never coming back for the same reason. So, without even knowing what the population of Bangladesh is at any given time, I can promise you that when those people decide to enter all the neighboring countries around them, all at the same time, all on the same day, all for the same reason, pretty much, it's going to be very disruptive. It just is. And you don't need 70 feet of sea level rise to see that happen. It could happen. It could literally happen tomorrow. It could happen tomorrow. A bad enough thing hits and it persists for long enough that people give up. They give up, and the whole equation of giving up runs the same way in people's heads and in their lives and comes to the same conclusion for every one of them. They're all rational actors working with the same numbers, with the same conditions on the ground, and they're all going to come to the same conclusion at the same time. And any that don't, any that are just too dumb, when their neighbors start saying, well, we're leaving by, they're going to want to know, why are they leaving? Why are you leaving? Because you can't live here anymore. There's no water. There's no food. The kids can't go to school. We can't get the fish. We can't get the rice. We can't get whatever. No one cares about us. We're leaving. Then even the dummies will say, well, God, I can't live here if I'm the only one living here. We all harvest the rice. We all put the nets out. We all build the buildings and raise the children. So if you're all leaving, I guess I have to leave too, even if I'm a dummy or a climate denialist or even a rich person who doesn't theoretically have to deal with any of this stuff at all. I can go to the market and buy my food. Turns out there's no food at the market. What just happened? So here I am, a rich person. I don't have to do anything, but now I have to. And now I have to leave because everyone in the village left. The market is closed. There's not going to be any food deliveries. No one's going to run the water plant. No one's going to run the sewer plant. No one's going to be there to protect us from disease. And everyone's leaving. And I'm going to stay here. Are you kidding? I'm leaving. That's how it works. That's how it is. That's human behavior. Everybody's running the same set of equations in their head. What can I do? What's going to hurt me? Is it over? And enough of them will come to the same conclusion at the same time that it's done, and they're going to leave. So 1-2 feet of sea level rise will trigger all over the planet. Will trigger waves of people doing the analysis in their heads, trying to keep it working. And 1 or 2 feet of sea level rise ruins the water, ruins the crops, ruins the fishing, ruins the homes, ruins the village life. Can't get in, can't get out. Enough of that will happen all over the world with 1 or 2 feet of sea level rise that it doesn't matter. The Greenland is going to be at 70 feet, will contribute 70 feet of sea level rise within 100 or 300 or 1,000 years. That doesn't matter. That is not important. We shouldn't even talk about that. It's completely irrelevant because by the time you get your fabled 70 feet of sea level rise, everybody's dead. Let's just say it together, folks. We're all dead. Let's all sing the dead song. By the time that happens, everybody's dead. Scientists continue to trot out these estimates of how bad it could be 100 years from now, 50 years from now. It has to stop. It must stop. It's got to stop now. None of this is real. None of this is true. Even if it happens, it would never mattered. It never once mattered. It doesn't matter when Greenland is going to melt. It matters when it starts. Because the first foot, maybe even the first few inches of global sea level rise is going to destroy everything. We are 8,000 million people. 8,000 million people. Most of us live coastal. Most of us are dependent on, local services, local fisheries, local, rice production, local crops. Most of us are living right on the beach where we can get easily to the fishing, to the ports, to the whatever. And the first foot or 2 or 3 of sea level rise is destroys everything for most of us. And nothing else matters. All the theoreticals don't matter. Now, I said in the last couple of videos that something has happened to the Earth dynamic system. I don't know what it is. This is the kind of question, honestly, can only be answered in hindsight. It was unexpected. And the fact that it was unexpected means we weren't looking. When the fact that we weren't looking, when so many people are looking at this stuff now, tens of thousands of people are looking at this stuff. The fact that nobody saw that coming, when everyone is looking at everything they can think of to look at, and they're looking all the time, and we're launching satellites into space to look for us 24/7. Okay, the fact that something like that happened and we missed it, that tells me something. I am not narrowly looking at any little part of this. Okay, my orientation as a scientist is system dynamics, whole system operational dynamics. How does this machine work? I can tell you it's almost impossible to understand how it works. It is possible to understand and recognize when it breaks. You could have a pocket watch that is it's a $10,000 pocket watch that is so complicated, so many gears going around, doing so many things. You can have a pocket watch that you have no chance of ever understanding that thing. Even if you took the back off and studied every single gear, you might never comprehend how this pocket watch works. But you'll sure know when it doesn't work immediately. You'll know immediately something's wrong with my pocket watch. The hands are going backwards. You know, the hands are banging against each other. You'll look at your pocket watch and you'll say, wow, it's never done that before. And then someone will come along and say, well, how do you know how it even works? You can't know that that's a problem, that the hands are actually banging into each other like this, or that it's going backwards. And you can say, but I've used this watch for thousands of years, millions of years, and it's never done that. You can have systems that are so complicated that the ability of humans through science, through data analysis, data collection, through observation, could never understand it. Made more complicated, by the way, by the fact that many of the gears and all the connecting tissue in the Earth dynamic system contains chaotic elements. Haha. So now you're dealing with chaos. Good luck with that shit. Okay. And yet there it is. The fact that the Earth dynamic system contains chaotic elements doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means it works chaotically. So that means you're not going to understand it. Your science is not going to be able to understand it. You'll understand it when it breaks. You'll look at it and say, oh, what's that? That doesn't seem right. You see that? Have you ever seen that before? I've never seen that before. Have you? No, you haven't either, right? Yeah, that's weird. Is anyone studying that? No, no one's studying that. Why would we study it? Because it's never been a problem, right? So you weren't studying it. I wasn't studying it. Now we're looking at it. We're like, okay. Well, then you send out a team of scientists and they do forensics. They go out in the ground. They look. What's the temperature? What's the airflow? What's the rainfall? Can we figure this out? I don't know. Something just happened. Something just broke. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm that guy. I am that guy who's looking at that thing, and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oh, that's weird. What? Wait, are you looking at this? That's weird, right? Yeah, I thought so. That should not be happening. This says, and this is a big deal, right? You think am I overreacting? No, I'm not, right? Okay, so this is a big deal. We weren't expecting that. We weren't looking for that. This is a big deal. Let's try and figure this out. Or more importantly, let's maybe, now that we don't know what's going on, and that happened, there's a thing, that's a thing. So there you go. There's some data for you. The data is you don't know what's going on. No one predicted this. I didn't predict it. No one did. So that's the thing. So now we know that we don't know what we're talking about. Now, scientists don't know what they're talking about because they're stupid. Scientists don't know what they're talking about because they don't have data. Scientists don't know what they're talking about because they don't know the thing they're talking about. It's the pocket watch that's got so many gears that articulate in so many strange ways that you can look at it and say, well, here it is, it's pocket watch, but you can't say anything about it because it's too complicated. It's got too much chaos in it. It's got all these emergent properties. It does things. It does things. My God, it's an entire planet. Okay. So it's going to do things. It's going to do things and you're going to miss them. We've been looking at this climate system for a long time. Right now, it's doing things that we were not expecting. Well, la di da. Maybe you should have adjusted your expectations. Maybe you shouldn't have been telling people all along, oh, we understand this. Maybe you shouldn't have been telling people all along, well, we'll be able to keep up with it. Well, it's not going to surprise us. Well, we've got lots of time. Well, it's going to be hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Maybe you should stop saying those things. Maybe you should just say when someone comes along, how much time do we have? Don't know. At what threshold do things fall apart? I don't know. 70 feet of sea level rise sounds like a bad thing, but maybe even 7 inches could be a bad thing. I just don't know. So should we be worried? Only if you're worried. Are you worried about the end of civilization? Maybe this is just our reality now. It's going to end. And we don't know when. It's going to end. We don't know when. We kind of know how. There's only a couple of hows. Sea level rise, extreme temperatures that are not survivable, extreme storms that are not survivable. And then, of course, all the secondary effects like food crises because of these other things, migratory crises because of these other things, political crises because of these other things, there's second order effects, third order effects, fourth order effects, right? Britain, the UK, exiting the European Union, Brexit, happened because Europe was forced to admit 1 million refugees from the Middle East and the Mediterranean, North Africa as well, because of reasons. Because Brexit happened, Trumpism happened in the US. These are massive political disruptions caused by 1 million immigrants. 1 million. What's the landscape going to look like when there's 100 million immigrants on the move? What's the landscape, the political, social landscape going to look like when there's 500 million immigrants on the move? And how do you get 500 million immigrants on the move? Well, you got 1 million immigrants on the move because those people came from drought-stricken areas in Syria and North Africa. They couldn't eat. So they up sticks and left, exactly as I described. And they all came to the same conclusion at exactly the same time for exactly the same reason. The droughts, whatever, affected everybody over a large region all at the same time. And they all decided all at the same time that the equation wasn't working. And they all got out. And then the ones who weren't ready to get out also had to get out. That's how it works. It doesn't work another way. That's exactly how it works. And that was 1 million people all coming to the same conclusion, all at the same time about the same thing that wasn't going away. And they left. And they ended up in Europe. And that got us Brexit and Trumpism. And 1 million. What if it's 500 million? Can't happen. 500 million people. Pfft, that's a joke. You're just alarmist, Chicken Little. You know what you're talking about. Yeah. God, well, that's what you're going to tell yourself, aren't you? That's what you're going to tell yourself. I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, nobody predicted those 1 million people leaving Syria and North Africa either. We're still having to deal with that. To this day, we're still dealing with that. And nobody is ready for the breakup of the Antarctic ice sheet. And no one is ready for the collapse of the Greenland ice sheet. I don't know what's going to happen. What's going to happen? 500 million refugees, maybe? Sure, why not? When? I don't know, 10, 20 years from now? Could be tomorrow. You could have another 1 million refugee event tomorrow. I'm not even joking. 2 days ago, Hurricane Otis came ashore in southwest Mexico, wiped out the tourist destination of Acapulco, and completely destroyed it. Now, that's 1 million people. Where are they going to go? Who knows? They'll probably stay in Mexico. But let's say a couple of events like that, pretty soon there's 10 million people walking around with nothing to do in Mexico. And then they say, well, we'll just go north. We'll just go north. And now we got 10 million people, everyone coming north. And again, they make these decisions all at the same time, all for the same reason. They're all doing the math in their head. They're figuring out it's not working all at the same time. And then as a group of them figure out it's not working, there's another group that says, yeah, you're right. And then they are on board. And pretty soon you got 10 million people coming to the Southwest US to cross the border because they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. Not because they're evil or they're rapists or they're murderers or they're bringing drugs or whatever. None of that, okay? These are straggling families with their small children, and they've just all made the same calculation, which is we can either stay here or die, or we can take our chances on going north. Some of us will make it. It's a crapshoot, you know, same as the Jews fleeing Germany, right? Some of us will get caught and we'll end up in the concentration camp, and some of us won't. And those of us that don't get caught, we make it through, will be the ones who write the books later about what we had to endure. And that's how that works. And so a lot of the people will try for the border run, and some will get caught and whatever, shot, sent back, I don't know, imprisoned, and some will make it through, and they'll have a narrative. They'll have a story. Yeah, we made the run. It worked for us. We know a lot of people, it didn't work for them. It's hard to move 10 million people. It's hard to move 100 million people. I don't know where these people come from. They're coming from everywhere. And when will that happen? I don't know. I'm just going to tell you, I don't know. Well, can't you be a little more specific? If you need me to be more specific, okay, all right. But I'm not going to be specific like, well, yeah, it'll happen in the year 2100. It'll happen in the year 2050. It'll happen next generation. I'm not going to say that. If you need a date from me, you want me to be specific. Okay, I'm reluctant to do that. But sure, I'll guess next week. Next week. You want a date? Next week. Oh, that's the wrong date? Well, then don't ask me for a date, because that's the date you're going to get from me every single time. Could you please guess? For the assembled people, what is your best guess? Your best learned guess on when this shit hits the fan? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, if you have to have one and you're not going to leave me alone until you get one, sure, next week. No, I'm not going to guess again. Next week. How? I don't have to know that. There's lots of ways that could happen. There's almost an endless number of ways. Do you have all day? Then get your pencil out and let's make a list of all the ways, because it's going to take all day. And or I could just say next week. Deal with it, or don't deal with it, or don't invite me back, or don't ask me again. I mean, this is not my problem. This is your problem. You're the one that wanted to date. I told you the scenarios. I told you what you're going to have to deal with, and you're the one that wanted to date because whatever reasons. Because until then, I can still sell real estate in South Florida. You want a date? A date when you have to stop selling real estate in South Florida? Okay. Next week. That's the date. Next week. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to say that. I'll say it. And I say it with some confidence that we don't actually know. So if we're going to guess, if we're just going to guess, just going to pull something out of our butts and just guess, next week. Category 5 hurricane came ashore in Mexico on the tourist town of Acapulco in Mexico. Category 5 had never happened before. Never. There's no data to suggest when last week, the week before, there was no data. If someone had asked a scientist, a climate scientist or a meteorologist, so when do you think we're going to get a Category 5 hurricane coming ashore in Acapulco? They would have to say, well, if they're honest, they would say, I don't know. I really don't know. Doesn't seem very likely. It's never happened before. Conditions don't even seem to exist for that. So if I have to make a guess, I don't know, 100 years from now, sounds like a really rare event. It sounds like an event that maybe happens every 500 years or so, because it hasn't happened recently. So if it's a 500-year event, we don't know. I'm just going to guess that because lack of data. There isn't any data, so I'll just say 500-year event. Then maybe in a couple hundred years, you'll get a Category 5 hurricane here coming through here. Now, if they'd asked me, I'm going to tell you, oh, yeah, next week. Everybody else is laughing. What does that cougar guy know? He doesn't know anything. He just pulled that out of his butt. Well, I did. That's right, I did. You didn't have to ask me. But if you're going to ask me, I'm not going to say 500 years from now. I'm not going to say 50 years from now. I'm going to say next week. And then a week later, ta-da! There she is. There she is, coming ashore, beating the shit out of you, washing your people into the sea, destroying everything you thought was eternal and immortal under the eyes of God, destroying it all. Every building is torn to shit. Everything that was upright is knocked down, and you're finished. And you ask the one guy, and he says, I don't know, there's no data, maybe 500 years. And you ask me, and there's no data. I'd rather not guess, but sure, next week. Me, I was right. I was right. And that's going to be the reality going forward. Scientists should not be pontificating on when they think this is going to happen. They should never have guessed on when Larsen A was going to collapse. They should never have guessed when Larsen B was going to collapse. They should not be guessing on when the Weyas is going to collapse or when the Thwaites Glacier is going to cut loose. They should not be guessing on when we're going to get a foot of sea level rise in downtown Miami. They should not be guessing on these things unless they want to guess next week. When will the Weyas collapse? Next week. When will Larsen A collapse? Oh, it collapsed 10 years ago. You didn't know? Oh, yeah, right. Not paying attention, right? Understandable. Common mistake. Yeah, it collapsed 10 years ago. And when are we going to get our first event or series of events in one place or around the world, somehow combining together, conspiring to all happen at the same time, that gives us our first 100 million wave of refugees, destabilizing neighboring countries and the global economy? You really want me to guess? Yeah, if you would, please. What do you think? 200 years, 100 years? You really want me to guess? Yeah. What's your best guess? Your best guess. Your best informed guess based on data. Okay. Next week. Oh, surely. No. Next week. But it's 100 million people. Come on. It's got to be down the road. No, not at all. I'm being data driven here. Everything's happening sooner than we thought for reasons that we couldn't even imagine. No one's even looking at the things that are going to cause these things to happen. No one's even has their eyes on it. We don't have satellite eyes on this stuff. So next week. Now, if that causes you to maybe change some policies or some planning or some projections, maybe you should do that. If that causes you to become a little bit anxious about global heating and the resulting climate change, oh, well, maybe you should be anxious. Maybe and if that causes you to want to stop changing the Earth dynamic system and, maybe avert some of these looming inevitable crises, well, maybe you should do that now, because the 100 million people, the hypothetical 100 million people, the events that will lead up to that have 100 million people on the move, destabilizing everything, hungry, needing shelter, food, children, families, elders, the whole thing. Not drug cartels, not rapists, not murderers, not convicts, families. Terrified little children, 100 million of those. Next week. Or don't ask me. Just do your thing. Live in ignorance. Live in self-imposed ignorance. Live your best life completely unaware of what's coming for you. Just do that. Don't ask me. Just do it. Get in your SUV, drive to Starbucks, sit in the drive-thru, get your latte, go down the freeway at 70 miles an hour feeling great. Just feeling like this is the best it's ever been. Don't ask me, because I'm going to tell you next week. And then when you're sitting in the line waiting for your latte, you might be having some feelings about that. I'm doing this, and next week, I'm told, there's going to be 100 million people looking for food, clothing, and shelter. And here I am with my heated seat, waiting for my latte, the coffee beans that come from Ecuador, all the way to wherever I live. And, and tomorrow, next week, there will be 100 million people looking for food, clothing, and shelter, according to one man's prediction. Yeah, I'm that one guy. I'm that guy. I am that guy. And if you want to know what I think is going to happen next week. And that's actually the direction things are headed. When are we going to get a Category 5 hurricane in southwest Mexico in Acapulco 3 days ago. Oh, you didn't hear about that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. 3 days ago. When are we going to get 3 feet of the sea level rise that's going to displace 100 million people all at once for the same reason? Going in all different directions, trying to find all the same things: food, clothing, and shelter. When's that going to happen? Next week. 3 sea level rise. You can't be serious. It's just physically impossible. Okay, well, next year then. Oh, come on. A year to get 3 level sea level rise? This is ridiculous. You can't talk like that. That's alarmist. Okay, then be alarmed. You should be alarmed because we don't know when. We don't know. We don't know. Now, I'll state for the record that I don't think 3 level of sea level rise is likely next week. I don't even think that 1 foot of sea level rise is likely next week. But as for the question, what's wrong with these people? As for the question, when might we have 100 million refugees roaming the planet, looking families, children, elders, looking all for the same thing: food, clothing, and shelter? When could that happen? Which is a less specific event, right? It's just a culmination of a lot of events. It's a symptom, okay, of something else that broke, or some series of some things that broke. When could we have a symptom, an outcome that has 100 next week? Well, yeah. Well, yeah, sure. That's totally on the table. 100 million people roaming the planet looking for food, clothing, and shelter next week. Oh, sure. Well, yeah, why not? Lots of ways that could happen. That might already be happening. Here we are talking about it, and it may have started last summer. It may have started 6 months ago. We simply didn't notice. We're not looking at these things, right? Who's looking at this? And if they were looking, are they going to tell anybody? Do they want to be that guy who says, "Hey, we got a problem here"? Do they want to be the Cassandra, the sky is falling, Chicken Little? Do they want to be that person? Maybe not. Maybe they know what's happening. They're just not going to tell you. 100 million people on the roam, looking for food, clothing, and shelter. It could already be happening, and they might not tell you. What if it's a UN organization that knows for a fact that right now, as I'm sitting here saying it could happen next week, it happened 6 months ago? What if there's a UN relief agency sitting on that data because they're too scared to say anything about it? And I'm saying, oh, yeah, it could happen next week. But it happened last month, okay? You wouldn't even know. I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm not going to say it couldn't have happened. They're sitting on the data. They're dealing with the situation or not dealing with it, and they don't want to get blamed for it, and they don't want to be the ones who have to hold the bag, okay? So just ignore the fact they were not going to tell anybody. They could be not telling anybody. It could be happening already. I'm saying next week. It could have been last month. We are off the edge of the map. We are off the chart. We don't know where we are. We are in uncharted territory. And when you're in uncharted territory, you shouldn't be pretending you know where you are or what the conditions are beneath you or what the conditions are ahead of you. We are off the map. We have no guidance. We have no models. We have no ability to project. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're talking about. We don't know what's happening. Shit is falling apart. That's all I can tell you. Got data for that. Oh boy, do we. We got data for that. And then you ask me, all right, so when are we going to get 100 million refugees roaming the world looking for food, clothing, and shelter? Next week? Last month? We are in big trouble. We are in big trouble. And as I've lamented in prior videos, we lack the language. I lack the language in English. Maybe there's a way to say this better in Tagalog or Lappish, okay? Or in Swedish. Maybe there's another way to say this that better characterizes than the limits I have in English. Yeah, we're in big trouble. Oh, baby. We're in big trouble. And the nature of the trouble is we don't even know what kind of trouble we're in. It's like a secondary effect. We could be in huge trouble that is actually insurmountably bad because it's just all wound up in the laws of physics and human behavior and political realities and economic entanglements. And we could be in trouble that is so much trouble that involves such enormous amounts of pain, so much disruption that we can't even describe it. And it could happen. It could come to a pinnacle. It could come to a breaking point next week, literally next week. And it may manifest itself with 100 million people suddenly taking to the road, up sticks, got to get out of here next week. It could be a limited nuclear exchange between two nations that are under a lot of internal stress next week. It could be a massive collapse of the economic system under stress from all these nations that are under stresses that no one is even looking at next week. It could be a complete collapse of the food supply system due to supply chain problems, shipping problems, fuel problems, expense of the fuel, lack of labor, lack of ships, problems at sea next week. We just don't know. So if you just don't know, don't guess it's going to take 100 years. Don't guess it's going to take 50 years. Don't guess that it's going to be another generation's problem. The actual time when all this comes to a head and all these dominoes fall over and all the house of cards comes down is actually the best guess, the most useful guess, the guess that that has the best opportunity to save you from unlimited amounts of destruction and annihilation. The best guess for when all this comes apart is next week. Next week. That's the best guess. That's the data-driven guess. Things are falling apart. The Earth dynamic system is not holding together. It's not. Things are coming through from the satellites, from the analysis, from the data that suggests that, wow. That's what people are saying. Wow. This is a wow moment. And you do not, maybe you don't mind when, your kid comes home from school and says, wow, what a day. Okay. That could be a problem. Sit down and tell me what it's about. But what if your boss comes into your office and says, wow, have I got news for you? Okay, that's a little more alarming. What if the president of the United States walks up to the podium at the urgent press conference and the first thing he says is, wow. That, everyone sits up. Everyone starts taking pictures. Everyone starts recording. What are you saying next? Because the next thing is going to be a big deal. All right. We are in a wow moment. The whole planet just said, wow. And I'm just here to put voice to that. And we don't even have words to reflect what that means. What does it mean when the entire Earth dynamic system sits up straight and says, wow? That should set you off. Sets me off. And if wow coming from the Earth system means 100 million refugees, and you ask me when, next week then. Next week. That's a problem for you? How is it a problem for you? Because you got to do something? Oh, well, actually, I'm not sure you can do something if it's next week. Maybe 40 years ago, you could have done something. But now, wow. We're going to get another wow, aren't we? That's the state of things. That is the state of things. Not making it up. Not trying to be alarmist. I'm just sitting here thinking, wow. I'm done.